Hi there, traders, and welcome to Trade the Structure and another new trading day. We're coming into the Asian market session. So we're just going to recap the action from overnight in the European markets and the US markets, look at our key levels and where we see some action playing out. Okay, just getting set for the day. So we'll start off with just Aussie market. We're looking at the SPY Direct, which is the SPY 200, and we're looking at the 5-minute chart here. And then we'll get onto a bit of a wider perspective on the 15-minute chart on the XJO. So kicking it off, we've got the SPY. That was yesterday's action. It pretty much opened up, found some sellers, and moved off that high at 76.02, which is pretty much near the all-time highs. Moved off that level, which you would expect as we ramped up into that zone. You would expect some sort of profit taking. I thought it may have sort of flushed the level. Maybe it's too early. Maybe it's not ready just yet, and maybe it's just ready to build a bit of a base and blast off and go through into new all-time highs. So yesterday's action, it finished pretty much on its lows, and then we found once we opened up the start of European session was quite positive. The DAX took off, and the FTSE actually wasn't really as positive, but it did grind higher. So that's provided some support into the SPY. We've got the market, it popped down, tested into that 75.30, and then pretty much chopped around here, found some resistance and some sellers at 75.68. So what I'm really looking for is a bit of a flush. I would expect that level to flush. Now, I will be looking for a potential that to fall back below that level at 75.68, provide a lower high and grind its way down. I think if that is the case, then that is a key lower high, and we might get a move down and through 75.30. If not, if this actually proves to be the key, we had that bit of a flush down and we bounce straight back again, we could easily just sort of pop up, retest that level and work our way to 76.02. Okay, bigger perspective, we've got on the XJO, like I said, all-time highs at around 76.40, that zone in there. Thought it would have pushed up through, but it failed. We had a bit of a flush at this level. A flush of these buys that have built up, flushed in, held, and it's sort of retested that with that spike. So, at the moment, it's an each way bet. It could roll over from here. It could pop up. You don't really know. Okay, so the momentum's not giving us too much. It could easily just as ease lower as it could pop higher. So on that chart, again, I'm just looking for the way the US was last night. Tech was actually weighed on the market. The Dow was actually up, but tech was sort of the key at the moment. If that starts to drive lower, I would expect that to drag down the rest of the market, such as the US, the Dow, S&P will be weighed down by just a few handful of stocks, as we know, the FANGs. And if that's the case, we should get sold into as well, you would expect anyway. I think with the US dollar moving down, it could support, well, it's going to support commodities and probably in turn support our market. So that's what we're looking for there. You've got this level here. I wouldn't be surprised if we do, again, flush through 76.01 and start to weigh down and potentially retest that 75.58 area. Over to the Asian markets, the Hang Seng. Hang Seng index itself is looking quite heavy. Okay, so it's looking like it's getting weighed down on the daily basis, which doesn't mean too much. It could mean you get a bit of chop, but basically the bias is going to go down. Okay, it's going to be down. So what I would be looking for here is a bit of a pop, and then on the open, and maybe a lower high to work into it and move through 26.95. It could just chop. Look, there's two sessions on the Hang Seng. It could happen in the first session if it's going to play out, or it could actually flush into this low here, bit of a bounce in the first session, and really start to drag in some buys before the second session starts to flush them back out with a move down through that level. Okay, so we've just got each plan. That sort of pop is what I'm ideally looking for. Otherwise, if we do start to flush into that zone and start to hold, then we're going to have to work some longs off higher lows. All right, but either way, for me, that longer term action is down. The daily's not looking too crash hot, and there is some pressure into the Hang Seng at the moment. Nikkei. Now the Nikkei, we had that little pop on the open yesterday and then flushed into that zone at 27.112, and it retested again overnight about, coming to the close of the US session, probably a couple of hours before the close, before we got this little bounce. So we could get another flush up. I don't think it'll be as severe as that one there. And if that's the case, and we start holding a lower high, I'll be looking for a bit of a flush and then some lower highs to work into and see if this could actually take us through 27.112. The Nikkei underlying index on the sort of 30-minute basis is not, look, it's not too bad, but it's not convincing at all for the buyers. So I do expect potentially that could roll over at any minute. And if it starts to roll over, we're in a good little zone. So we've had this sort of high produced, a big sell-off, and we had the market grind away back up through that high into 27.430, and then we're getting some negative action as well. So it's not convincing the way it's got through these highs. Hasn't really gone on with it too far. It was really just a flush of that high on the open yesterday, and then we sort of retested that high there with a lower high, and potentially we're going to start to roll, but it is getting supported off at 27,112. So we'll just wait and see what the open brings us. The Dow consolidated through there yesterday. Once the European market opened and started charging higher, the Dow took off. Okay, and once the US opened, I think it was about here, that red candle there popped up, but it got supported on the open as the index got supported. So the actual futures were already sort of hovering around that level. I would expect a pop at the very least. I would expect a pop into that level just to take out some stops to flush that level at 35,341, and then I'll be looking for a lower high if it can't, if it can't sort of pop up and hold that level, and so consolidate. I would expect that lower high and then pressure some of these longs out of the market, just squeeze them out of the action. Okay, potentially for a test into 34,885 again. US tech, Nasdaq, you can see this is sort of a key level at the moment, 14,287, and that was around the open of the US market. It sort of popped up into that level. European markets buoyed that Nasdaq, and then it got sold into. Okay, so whether or not there's going to be some more continuation lower, we're going to sort of consolidate through here, maybe a bit of a flush before we get another lower high and work down to 13,740. We'll have to wait and see. It could just as easily start to reclaim this zone in here. Right, if we draw that up a bit better, you've sort of got these highs here, it flushed up through, come back and retested, and it's back into that level. So it could just as easily, the way it's looking, it could just as easily start to reclaim that and head back up, as it could drive through and start to retest it and move down. Okay, so it's at that tipping point potentially, but there might be some bulls when the market opens tonight. The DAX, over to the DAX now. The DAX actually rallied on the open. You've got 6 o'clock. It was around here. It was just flushed that level at 14,183, which it loves to do, flush it and rally. Okay, so the way it was sort of hovering around that level was a bit of a heads up that, okay, we may be looking to break. You don't really know, so you're looking for two scenarios of that. Once that market opens, you're looking for a pullback and a retest, okay, under the level, and then a lower high. Okay, you're looking for sells, but the fact that it sort of flushed and popped straight back up above the level, and you've got your nice little high low to work from, leading me to believe that that level is going to hold. We just trap some sellers before ramping back up into that 14,330 area. So for now, maybe we're doing the same thing here. Just move that. Maybe we're doing the same thing. We're just going to chop around here, flush and rally again, or this time around it could just be a bit of a grind higher before we dump back through that level. Okay, we'll wait to see what that open is, but it is at a key level. It's just tested quite a few times before failing, retested from below before you're getting sold off a bit more. But at the moment, we're just sort of around that zone at the moment. So I wouldn't be diving into anything long or short just yet. It needs to prove itself or give us some sort of heads up once the European market opens, the DAX reopens. Like I said, pop through, lower high off the level and work short, or sort of a grind through, maybe a flush and then reclaim a bit like we saw previously. The UK 100 or the FTSE, it's a real grind at the moment. It's a messy market. It's been holding that 75.39 zone through there. As we can see, it's been just grinding its way higher. Okay, there's nothing I like about that price action at the moment. I don't think it's quite clear. I don't think we're seeing anything. We're just seeing a market that's been grinding higher as we see buyers continually step in. Now they're talking up rate rises, inflation, which should be supportive of shares. Maybe not the pound at the moment, but the pound's doing okay. That we've got an inside level at 75.96. Now if that can continue to hold, you get these sort of spikes down and then grind their way back up, spike down, grind their way back up. We might be looking up to 76.70 tonight. Okay, that could be the case. Otherwise, we're going to start to fail at a lower level. We're going to start to hold these inside levels potentially, lower highs coming in, some sellers, but this level will need to break to convince me that anything on the downside could be coming. Okay, for now, it's just a grind, choppy, messy market. We'll go over to the currencies now. We'll just go over to trading view. So we've got dollar index. Now we spoke about this yesterday, coming off, sort of a major high up there above. Well, I won't really go back too far, but above the 101, and you can see this action here, the way it's consolidated there. Sort of that starts to fail, which was yesterday, sort of after the open. The US dollar started to fail. Then we get some lower highs to work into, which played out pretty nicely. And you're going to have to translate that to the currencies, say euro, pound, Aussie, etc., the yen. Now there could be this, the way this is playing out here, it could be working on the yen. It could be some selling into the US dollar because of the yen, some buying, reversal of those short positions into the yen. So when you're shorting into the yen, essentially the dollar's getting buoyed. Now, when you reverse those positions, you have to buy them back. The opposite trade to that, or the exact opposite, is to sell into that US dollar. So it might be finding that if there's a bit of an unwind of some short positions into the yen, it's flushing out, selling into the US dollar. If that's the case, I do expect that to continue lower, potentially, like we were saying yesterday, with regards to inflation and interest rate rises. A lot of interest rate rises already been factored. Was already been factored in, and you can see the bonds, which we'll look at should look at them now. You can see the longer term bonds yields decreased. Okay, so that rally was the short term. So that's a 30-year bond. I think this is a 2-year bond. They didn't do too much. So the short term, they're thinking interest rates rises about where they should be. There's no need to rally because there's no need to change your tune. Whereas you're talking longer term, they might have been, over factored in some rate rises into the longer term bonds, and that's why you're just getting those yields pop back up again as they start to reposition themselves. So for the dollar, that could be, dollar negative because it's sort of overshot the mark on the upside with regards to inflation and interest rate rises, and now we're getting this pressure down. All right, so what does that mean for currencies? We're looking at the euro. We were talking about this yesterday, popping up, played out beautifully. You got some really nice high lows to work into. Whether we're going to do the same thing is another story. We could, from here, just retest a bit of a spike back into that 108.18 zone before finding some support again. But if that US dollar negativity continues, we're going to get some pressure, upside pressure into the euro. And to me, that does look okay. Just you could be worried about those flushes. So we've sort of got this zone here, break out of the high there, might mean a rally. So you could sort of box it up that way, break through the high there, look for a move through these 108.66 and the extension on that rally. Or we go through the lows, it could be just a lower high and a flush. So this is really this zone through here, 108.24. This area, you got the move up, pull back. That's the key to the upside. Okay, that's the anchor to the upside. So as long as it doesn't break, we could easily get a flush, reset, and then go again. Okay, the pound. Now the pound is same sort of scenario. That US dollar weakness is translated to buying into the pound. It's grinding higher. I'm not too convinced that looks too great. You've got a higher low just in here, which is sort of anchoring that move up, and we've got this working off a key level at 13,000 even. Okay, so that's the level we're speaking about that tried to test and held previously. It's tested back into it, started to hold. As soon as you hold these higher lows, the market was going to get rammed, and we start to squeeze out some of these sellers at the moment. So it's how far it can go. It could be just targeting this zone up here around 130.80. Retest that, flush that before we find some sellers come back into the action, and I would expect that would coincide with some rally back into the US dollar. But if the US dollar keeps heading south, that should keep grinding its way higher. But overall, that doesn't look too convincing to me. Look at the pound, Aussie dollar. Found some love to one from the US dollar. We were speaking about this yesterday. We've got this rising support zone, and we're expecting that a move into there, it could be find some buyers and continue that longer term trend up, which is done there. So longer term, what I'd be looking for here, I would like to see a decent pullback. Okay, so this is all part of one move for me. You've got that. So I'll be looking for potentially something like that longer term and see if we can blast up and through 74.82. I wouldn't mind it just stalling below that level, dragging some buyers, start holding a higher level, and then go. Okay, but that's not going to happen, I guess, today, maybe tomorrow. I would expect a bit more price action maybe tonight to roll over a bit, maybe a bit of a pop in the US dollar, and then see if the US dollar has a bit of a lower high, pressures down, which should translate into a bit of a buying opportunity into Aussie dollar. But we'll see. That's longer term what I'll be looking for, but it could, like I said, it could just do something like this, grind up, consolidate, keep going, could push up through here, consolidate sideways and go again. Okay, but that's ideally what would, I think, lead to a good move up to this 70, to the highs at 76.51. US yen, I haven't actually looked at this just yet, but there is some selling in there. So what I read something on Twitter, you got the front runners running that 130, I think it was a 130 area at 130 level, which is what the BOJ's put the line in the sand. So 130, that's, we don't want to go higher than that. We're going to start to intervene. And you got the front runners running that level, and then you got the front runners front running the front runners, if that makes sense. So there's all, everyone's expecting some sort of short to come into that, which could be that, we get sellers come in and it just jams higher and squeezes them out. This may be what it needs to pressure back up to get to through 130. Okay, just because the BOJ going to intervene doesn't mean that, technically it's just going to take a bit of a nosedive, but it's a big, red flag if you're long. Okay, so that's still, we're in an uptrend here, bit of a pullback just to squeeze out some of these buyers here, maybe a pullback. We might hit a bit lower today, back into here. We might find some support, potentially through this zone, back into there or slightly higher if this level if this trend up is going to continue. All right, but for now, it is really bullish. Got that sort of that trend up, really bullish, which means that if there is going to be intervention and there is going to be an unwind, there could be a massive unwind on the cards of those longs into the US yen, which means unwind of shorts into the yen. All right, we'll see how that plays out. We'll go over to, I'll look at gold here. And actually, I'll look at gold just over here, and then we'll get onto the rest of it there. So gold. All right, so we're looking at gold. We were talking about this yesterday, a bit of a pop. There could have been holding at this level, which pretty much closed. We're talking about yesterday around this zone, 1948. Thinking, key level was down here at 1939, which it did sort of flush into. It didn't flush level, it held, and now we've got this bit of a bounce. Okay, so it has bounced off that level, holding higher lows, higher high here, high lows here, just pressured up. I'm sort of expecting that we may get a test in 1964. We may fall short at these areas through here, maybe. But I'm sort of looking for that to if that sort of plays out there and we get a lower high, I'm expecting it to push back down to 1939 and even lower. All right, it's that momentum. Once it starts to get up here, it looks like momentum stalling. So maybe I think that buying into that was because they're selling into the US dollar. Now, if the US dollar starts to bounce a bit, we could get that savage move down. We may just get a grind down. It all, I think, depends on what that US dollar is going to do. It's moving as a currency at the moment, as opposed to any safe haven buying or inflation hedge. If it was going to be an inflation hedge and we're talking up inflation easing down the track, then I don't think gold's going to start to rocket up. I think everyone wants to. The gold bugs want it to, but it doesn't look like it's going to start to rocket up to me at the moment. On this time frame anyway, it looks like that if that's one big leg, we've got a bit of a grind up. We start to roll over from here. Great. If we start to, we could just just as easily keep grinding up through, and maybe heading up to 1983 if the US dollar keeps going down. But it doesn't look too convincing on the upside. It looks more convincing like it could get a bit of a sell-off. All right, let's get back over to here. We'll look at, say, crude. Look at crude, copper, and we should finish off on some cryptos. So oil. We've got oil here. It's faded off this zone here. We busted up and through, faded back off. We've got really the anchor was up here. Once it started to break out, we start to take out some lower highs. Whether we're going to that was a bit of a sharp move down and we start to get buoyed here. It could be that it's just, that's your move up, that's your big pullback. If we start to get back up through this zone, which is around, was it 103.87 or so, we start to get back up through there, I think it's going to start attacking those highs. Just because that's your trend down, you can sort of start to piece together the action. That's your trend down. We've got a double bottom, major RTF down here, a retest fail, leg up, maybe this is your pullback, and maybe we're going to get a secondary leg up. Okay, so if that's the case, and that's your leg up there, and we start to get a secondary leg up, to me, it looks like that could be the play, but it's where from. Okay, if it's from roughly here, that would take us up into these highs, potentially back up to the all-time high, well, not all-time highs, but the recent major highs at 116 area. Okay, that could be the case. Even if you start to look at this, that looks like what sort of played out. If they're basically going to hold, we're looking for that major high low. We could get another good run up. Whether it just keeps rolling down to 93.50 is a different case. At the moment, that short-term action's been down. It's just the way that spiked and retraced quite savagely. Okay, that move down, that was about 130. So it's sort of just after the open of the US session, spiked down and retraced quite well. Okay, so that could be just a major flush of these lows. Took out of the stops, dragged in some sellers, and we turn around and squeeze them back out. And it could be to start the process of, holding a higher level here and starting to work its way back up again. We'll wait and see. So the copper, all this choppy action, it's still stuck in sort of that range there, and we're sort of at the bottom end of that range now. So are we going to hold that zone there, which is around 462.40? Okay, whether we're going to hold that, just draw this out. We're going to hold that and start to bounce back up and continue to stick in that range. We'll just drag that out there. It's just flushed the low before we got this move all the way back up. Now we just flushed the low again, and if that's anything to go by, we're going to move all the way back up to these highs. Okay, it looks a bit uncertain at the moment. That's why it's just stuck in this range. And we're on the 30-minute chart, don't forget. So And that's after a massive, let's just go down to the daily, after a big move up on the daily charts. Okay, so you got this good move up, and we really haven't done too much. We've gone through these highs, so I think the reason why we're getting that range bound action on the shorter term is because we've flushed and failed through this high. Okay, on a daily perspective, flushed and failed through that. Are we going to hold a lower high here and head down and start to take out all these longs? There's a massive amount of longs build up, or are we going to hold, consolidate, and go again and start to trade into new all-time highs? So at the moment, it's kind of an each-way bet. Looking at that short term, which if you're biased down because of the daily, that's going to drag in some shorts, and we turn around and squeeze them back out again. Okay, but we'll wait and see. Now over to we'll finish off on what do we got? Bitcoin and Ether. Bitcoin was trading somewhere around here, popped up, consolidated, took off. It was somewhere around here. 20. It was about here. So it was trading around that level, 41,450, before it took off, dragged in some buys, flushed them straight back out again with a move down. So if that's the case, I would expect that to start to roll over, maybe hold this level, and we should start to push back below. I'm looking for a lower high and a move down to potentially down to 39,200. If the Nasdaq gets more pressure tonight, I would expect that to be the case. And looking at Ether, I think this pop up here was just because Ethereum, we were talking about this yesterday, popping up into that 3146 level, flushing it and potentially failing, which it did just that. Okay, failed it off that level. And so now it's about this 3051 area. If we start to hold that, I'll be looking for a move back up to 3146. But if we start to, grind our way up, we could dump back down through, because that could be the fact that we've gone through this level here at 3068, this low through here, that was the anchor to move up. So you've got move up, pull back, anchor, move up, pull back, anchor, move up, blown through the anchor, flush through the anchor. So we could be just pop through, grind our way back up and roll over. That's what I'll be looking for at the moment. I want to see a key lower high and a secondary move down, which could be, whoops, look for that sort of action there, up, and a bigger move down to 29.42 potentially. All right, that's all I wanted to talk about. So I try to keep it short, but still over the 20-minute mark. Thanks very much for joining me. If you do like what you hear, it'd be much appreciated if you can jump on the YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave us a like and help us spread the word and build that community. Otherwise, I'll speak to you again tomorrow. Enjoy your trading day.